am a teacher at Lincoln High School, where I have had the privilege of teaching art for 16 years. I have technically been a teacher for 17. I started off in elementary school, but made the transition a very long time ago to teach art. Art for me is expression. It's sharing, it's exercising like little demons and things that we just can't put words to. Art is also just fun, it's craft, it's a stress reliever, it's so many different things to different people. As a teacher, teaching art is about the humanities. I mean, it's about see people get that human side, let go of like inhibitions, start to share things they didn't know that they maybe wanted to share, to take risks and like be young and have fun. And so for me, teaching art isn't necessarily about teaching art, it's about the humans I get to teach.
I've been involved in art since my freshman year in high school. That's when they first started having art classes for me. To me, art is just a way to have this creative expression for yourself and just to create things that people don't see every day. So very imaginative and also a stress reliever too. I chose art as my major because I'm really close to my grandfather, and he actually did painting for a long time as a side job. He was a civil engineer, and he also sold paintings on the side in our town. And whenever I found out that I was actually good at art, he noticed that and he started collaborating with me, helping me learn more, and I just fell in love with it. Art is important because it's a different way to express yourself, and because we actually are required for like our high school A-through-G requirements, you're supposed to do art or music because they want you to get this broad education, a general education, where you're able to learn a little bit of everything, and art is a lot of everything, honestly. You can find art anywhere, and with that, I think art is very important because you use it in math, you use it in English, you use it in science, you use it in history. There's so many different things that you could do with it, and some people don't understand that because some people just think that it's just something to do for fun, but it's more than that.
So it's funny that people say art is a dead major. I would say that your traditional like painting, like I'm gonna grow up and I'm going to be a painter, that as an artist is like old and like done, and like that poor starving artist stereotype that people have built. Like art is a profession, and so if you're going into the arts, you're going into the arts to do something with it. You're going to design, you're going to create stories, you're going to create comics, you're gonna create t-shirts, you're gonna do advertising, you're gonna work in the film industry, you're gonna work on props, you're gonna work on storyboarding. So for me, if we did the archaic, this stereotype, I'm a painter and I'm gonna produce these paintings and people are gonna love them so much, that's dead, and it should be dead. And so there are 1% of artists who will do that. And there's a need for that 1%. However, there is 99% that are doing something amazing, something creative, something that is original and no one else can do, that they have to offer to the world. And so that's what an artist does. And so art is not dead, art's actually thriving. I mean, look at all the content on every single piece of television, on every single little app. You know what I mean? An artist is working on those.
In terms of art being considered a dead major, I would think that it kind of looks like it, honestly, at times, because you see here at Pacific, there's so few art majors. Just a couple days ago, my friend asked me, he was like, oh, do you know how many other art majors there are that are in your grade level? And I could only think of myself and one other person. So you don't see it as often in schools where it's not an art institute. But even at art institutes, everybody's striving to become an artist, and that's a really hard thing to do. And not many people think that it's actually beneficial in the long run. I've had a lot of people come to me and ask me what my major is, and once I tell them, the response is just, oh, they don't really care about it. So to a lot of other people, it's considered a dead major because they don't see any outcomes that could happen other than becoming an artist, potentially an art teacher. And in other people's eyes, they just don't see it as something that you can develop a career from.
The demand and the budget cuts have changed my mind a little bit in becoming an art major and switching over to psychology, because you have to do it all on your own. You have to build it from the ground up, and for me, it was just much easier to transition to psychology. I almost felt like they pushed me towards doing that instead. And from a financial standpoint, like, I thought about going to the Art Institute in San Francisco, but I couldn't because I was looking at the prices and it's like $40,000 or more, because not only are you paying for the classes, but you're paying for the art supplies, the pencils, the paintbrush, you're paying for everything. And then when you're a psychology major, all you're paying for is the class itself. It was much cheaper.
In particular, budget cuts have affected the major in general, particularly my major, because I know at Pacific there's your BFA, so your Bachelor in Fine Arts, so there's a couple of studio art majors. However, I'm an art major, so not studio art, just art. And the second year into school, they actually dropped my major, and they only had a BFA instead of a BA, which is what I'm getting. So you see it right away where it's happening already, and it's happened before, and it'll happen in the future. I know that in particular, a lot of professors here who do decide to leave or decide to retire, they close that department in general. So I know our printmaking professor left last year, and this year printmaking was just closed altogether because of the budget cuts, and they did not want to provide another professor into the art department in order to have a printmaking class. So that makes our academic advisor's job way more difficult, because they're trying to find classes that substitute that for us, because that's a requirement for us. So I'm required to take printmaking, but I couldn't even do that. So with budget cuts, it's really, really difficult being in the major, staying in the major, and for those who potentially want to be an art major as well, what's going to be left if you keep on cutting our budget and eventually dropping the art department in general. People don't think that art majors actually have a chance in the workforce. People think that being an art major is just, all fun and actual no work, when in reality, it's a lot of work. We have 3-unit classes that are basically labs, 3 hours long, and then we have homework after that. That's basically taking a science class, but they don't see it as that. Other people don't see it as we're working as hard as them. For people who want to be doctors, people who want to be dentists, there's still art in that. It's really hard for us art majors to actually express how important it actually is, because some people just don't see it, but they do it every day.
It's an interesting, like having been here for 16 years, I've seen Art 1 be cut from 13 sections of Art 1 to this year we have just 4. I've seen a digital media class that I've designed be taken away from me and given to like technical education, where it's like super watered down and not an art course and not creative and not going to stretch kids and give them an outlet. I've seen freshmen no longer be able to take electives and have to take like a second math course. And so obviously I've had my budget cut about 25% like per student. I'm no longer allowed to have a lab fee. It has to be determined as a lab contribution. And so literally I think my budget is about half of when I started per student, which puts a little bit of a crimp on what we can do, but a lot of it is then you being very creative as a teacher and how can you still hit all of these dynamic things. Now, despite all those cuts, we've never had a bigger AP art program. We've never had more kids in advanced art. So we're doing really, really well, but we just don't get to have as many kids to try to reach. And so it's really, really sad. Like freshmen, it used to be like maybe a third of freshmen at Lincoln would take an art class. And now it's maybe a 10th. And so the chances for a kid to find their place at our school and a reason to come to school is now washed by like, oh no, you have to take a math class because you struggle at that. Like, well, where are they gonna find their humanity? My parents like, why are you wasting your life? Why don't you like use your math brain? Why don't you do something other than art where you're gonna have a future? And so my statement to them is I would rather make less money and do something I love than like forfeit my passion, my humanity, like in a pursuit. And so to my students, I always explain to them, there have never been more jobs in the arts than today. Like that myth of you're gonna be a poor, starving artist if you pursue that, that's a lie. If you pursue your passion 100%, you're going to find a niche you're gonna find a way to make a living. And that living might not be $1 million a year like some fancy pants thing. It might be that you're a teacher. And I couldn't think of a better way to grow as a human than using your art to touch other people. It might be that you're an illustrator. It might be that you work in like communication somewhere and help people with creative ideas. And so an artist isn't just one thing, an artist is a problem solver. And so I would say that that's a null point, and you'll figure out a way to make a living.